Most men don't lose relationships, they lose themselves first. And when you lose yourself, the relationship was never really yours to begin with. It was just a fragile arrangement held together by fear, fantasy, or the illusion that peace is the same thing as strength. Let's be honest, how many times have you changed your voice just to keep her calm? How many times have you said yes when everything inside you said no? How many times have you silenced your truth to keep the connection alive, not realizing that every time you do that, you kill a part of who you are? This message isn't about blaming women, it's not about domination or distance. It's about becoming grounded, rooted, unshakable. Because most men think being a good partner means being agreeable, adaptable, and endlessly available. But that's not love, that's self-erasure. The Stoics believed that love, like life, is not something to be possessed or controlled. It's something to be practiced with virtue. They believed that no external thing, not a woman, not her affection, not her attention, could ever be the source of your peace. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, but still had to remind himself daily to remain calm, humble, and clear in the face of chaos. Epictetus, born a slave, became a master of his emotions and a teacher of sovereignty. Seneca faced death with dignity and taught us that love must never come at the cost of self-respect. And that's what this video is about. It's not about how to get a woman to love you. It's not about manipulation or tactics or tricks. It's about how not to lose your soul in the process of trying to be loved. Too many men think strength in love is about control. But Stoic strength is about clarity. It's about showing up as who you are, firmly rooted in your principles, your values, your mission, regardless of who stays or who walks away. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to be cold. You need to be centered. You need to be sovereign. Because here's the truth. When you become a man who doesn't compromise his essence for connection, you become the kind of man who commands respect without ever asking for it. This isn't about pretending to be emotionless. It's about not being ruled by emotion. It's about knowing that your identity doesn't live in her opinion of you, that your masculinity isn't something she gives you, it's something you reclaim. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through 9 relationship mistakes that men make over and over again, mistakes that weaken the soul, sabotage intimacy, and quietly destroy respect. And more importantly, I'm going to show you how to correct each one from the inside out. No games, no manipulation, just the truth, grounded in Stoic wisdom and forged in the fire of personal responsibility. Because when you stop chasing validation, when you stop bending your spine just to feel accepted, when you stop mistaking comfort for connection, you become dangerous, not reckless, but deeply reliable. Unmovable, clear. So if you've ever felt like you gave too much and got too little, if you've ever silenced your voice just to keep the peace, if you've ever built your identity around someone else's love, only to watch it slip away, you're not alone. But that chapter ends here. This is your moment to come back home to yourself, to rebuild from a place of strength, to remember that you are not here to be chosen. You are here to choose who you become. Let's begin. The first mistake most men make is compromising their core values to keep the relationship alive. At first, it doesn't feel like a compromise. It feels like love. It feels like flexibility. It feels like sacrifice. You tell yourself, this is what it means to be a good man, to be patient, to give, to meet her halfway, and to a point that's true. But there's a line, and the moment you cross it, you stop being her partner and start becoming her shadow. You know when it happens. You say yes, but your gut says no. You agree, but your chest tightens. You smile, but something in you grows silent. And every time you do it, you're not just avoiding conflict, you're abandoning yourself. One quiet moment at a time. Stoicism teaches that virtue is the only true good, not approval, not harmony, not temporary comfort, virtue. Living in accordance with reason, principle, and what you know to be right. If you trade that away for the sake of love, it's not love anymore, it's dependency. It's fear wearing a mask. A relationship that costs you your identity isn't a relationship, it's a slow leak in your soul. You become less and less of yourself, hoping she won't leave, not realizing that by becoming less, she already has nothing left to stay for. Real respect comes from being clear on who you are, from defining your lines and holding them with calm, grounded strength. You don't need to defend them with force. You just need to live them without apology. If a woman is right for you, she'll respect your standards even if she doesn't always agree with them. And if she doesn't, that's not your loss. That's your liberation. You weren't made to bend to every emotional breeze. You were made to stand firm, rooted in your truth. Not rigid, but resolved. And when you live like that, something powerful happens. You stop attracting people who want to change you and start attracting people who want to grow with you. Don't betray your values for affection. It's not affection anymore if it requires self-abandonment. Don't apologize for your standards. Don't shrink to be accepted, because the moment you do, you'll start resenting her for the parts of yourself you handed away. You think you're making her happy, but deep down she can feel it too. The hesitation, the passivity, the silence. And eventually she won't feel safe with you, not because you weren't nice, but because you weren't real. So make this your rule. If it costs you your integrity, it's too expensive. No matter how beautiful she is, no matter how lonely you are, no matter how good the chemistry is, if it asks you to sacrifice your soul, walk away. Love without losing yourself. Now let's talk about the second mistake, seeking validation instead of giving purpose. This is the one that hides in plain sight. It doesn't always look needy. Sometimes it looks charming. It looks like always being available, like doing everything right, like constantly checking in, asking if she's okay, trying to fix every moment of tension. But beneath that, there's a quiet desperation. Please tell me I'm enough. And here's the hard truth. Every time you seek her validation, you're handing her the pen to write your identity. You're saying, who I am depends on how you see me. And that's a heavy weight to put on someone else. It's also a dangerous position to live from, because when your worth is external, your peace is always at risk. Epictetus said, if you want to be free, don't wish for things to be as you want them. Wish for them to be as they are, and you'll find peace. Seeking validation is the opposite. It's trying to bend reality to fit your fear. It's asking someone else to fill a void that only you can close. You weren't meant to live in reaction to someone else's perception of you. You were meant to live on mission, with clarity, with focus. When you know who you are, when you've spent time in solitude, in reflection, in service to something bigger than yourself, you stop needing her approval. Not because you don't care about her, but because you've already chosen to approve of yourself. And something incredible happens when you stop chasing validation. You create space. Space for her to actually respect you, admire you, feel safe around you. Because now your energy isn't desperate, it's directed. It's not clinging, it's confident. You're not asking, do you love me? You're asking, are you ready to walk beside someone who loves himself deeply and lives with intention? Purpose isn't about being perfect. It's about being clear. It's about knowing what you're building, what you stand for, what you're willing to walk away from. And when you live with purpose, your relationship becomes a place of expansion, not a place where you shrink just to keep the peace. Men who don't have a purpose end up orbiting someone else's world. They make her the sun, the moon, the reason. But women weren't built to be your god. They were built to walk beside a man who already knows where he's going. So ask yourself, are you leading your life, or are you waiting for someone else to tell you who to be? Are you waking up with direction, or are you waiting for a text message to feel okay? You were not born to chase approval. You were born to give direction. To stand for something, to offer structure, vision, protection, not just physically but emotionally. That doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you don't collapse under feeling. It means you hold the frame. You anchor the energy. You offer something solid. And when you do, something shifts in the relationship. She relaxes. She opens. She respects you. Not because you demanded it, but because you embodied it. Stop waiting for her to make you feel like a man. Show up as one, not to prove anything, but because it's who you are when you stop needing to be liked and start choosing to live in truth. Validation is borrowed power. Purpose is earned power. Choose the one that lasts. Let's talk about lust, and let's be brutally honest about it. Because the third mistake men make is letting lust override wisdom. This is the kind of mistake that doesn't just cost you peace, it can cost you years of your life. A man who is led by lust is a man who cannot lead himself. And if you can't lead yourself, you'll always be at the mercy of your desires, impulses, and temptations. Lust doesn't care about your purpose. Lust doesn't care about your future. It wants now. It wants the hit, the high. The chase, the illusion of intimacy, and if you let it, it will make a fool out of you. Not once, but over and over again. Marcus Aurelius wrote often about the need to master the body. He saw the urges of the flesh not as evil, but as something to be governed, controlled, disciplined. Because the Stoics knew something modern culture avoids entirely. Just because you feel it doesn't mean it's right. Just because you're attracted doesn't mean she's for you. Just because you're aroused doesn't mean it's love. When lust drives your decisions, wisdom leaves the room. You start ignoring red flags. You justify bad behavior. You tolerate chaos because she's beautiful. You compromise your values because the chemistry feels too strong. You stop thinking long-term and start worshipping the moment. But attraction without alignment is a trap. It's fire without containment. And while it might burn bright for a while, it always consumes more than it gives. A woman's beauty can inspire, but it should never dictate your actions. You can admire without chasing. You can desire without surrendering your clarity. That's the balance. That's real masculine discipline, not in repressing desire, but in mastering it. The problem isn't lust. The problem is when lust becomes your compass, when it overrides logic, when it whispers lies like, this time it'll be different, even though all the signs are familiar. You know how it ends. You've seen it before. You've lived it before, the rush, the obsession, the crash, the regret, and then the voice in your head saying, you knew better. You did know better. And next time, you will do better, because this is the moment you decide to stop being owned by your urges and start owning them. It starts by slowing down, by stepping back when desire takes over, by asking, is this person aligned with my values or just my fantasies? By remembering that a woman's presence in your life is not proof of your worth. You're already worthy. Her presence should reflect that, not define it. Train your body to serve your mind. Don't let the reverse happen. Your mind knows what's right, what's long-term, what's worthy, and the more you live in that clarity, the less power lust has over you. Because when you lead with wisdom, you still experience desire, but you choose whether to act on it. That's real freedom. That's real power. The fourth mistake men make is avoiding conflict to keep the peace. And this one is subtle because it disguises itself as kindness, as patience, as being the bigger person. But make no mistake, when you avoid necessary conflict, you don't create peace, you create resentment. The Stoics weren't afraid of discomfort. They embraced it, they trained for it, they saw it as the gateway to growth. And when it comes to relationships, discomfort is unavoidable. Two people, two stories. Two sets of expectations. Conflict is not the problem. Avoiding it is. When you refuse to speak up, when you swallow your opinions, when you let things slide over and over again, thinking it will make things better, all you're doing is weakening the foundation. You're letting tension pile up like debt, and one day it'll come crashing down with interest. You can't build a strong relationship on silence, and you can't build respect by hiding your truth. Every time you bite your tongue to avoid her reaction, you're teaching yourself that your voice doesn't matter. And the more you do that, the harder it becomes to recognize your own needs. But conflict doesn't have to be chaos. That's the part no one teaches you. You can be calm and confrontational. You can be direct and compassionate. You can say, "This doesn't work for me," without raising your voice or shutting down. When you bring truth into the open, yes, it might trigger emotion. It might create tension, but it also creates opportunity for clarity, for repair, for deeper connection. The truth might sting for a moment, but dishonesty wounds over time. So what are you avoiding? What conversation have you been rehearsing in your head but refusing to say out loud? What boundary are you afraid to enforce? What frustration are you turning into passive silence? It's time to say it, with kindness, but with strength. With presence, but without apology. You don't have to win the argument. You just have to show up honestly. The Stoics believed in living in accordance with nature, and part of our nature is communication. Real communication. Not manipulation. Not withdrawal, not passive-aggressive silence, but face-to-face, heart-to-heart truth. That's what creates real intimacy, not just the warm feelings, but the willingness to be real, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard, you can avoid conflict and lose connection, or you can embrace tension and grow something deeper. The choice is yours. A man who avoids conflict avoids growth, but a man who faces it with composure earns trust. And that trust is the foundation of every strong relationship. So speak, not to dominate, not to hurt, but to lead with truth. And watch how respect begins to grow where silence once lived. The fifth mistake is failing to set boundaries. And this one is so dangerous because it doesn't break things all at once. It erodes you piece by piece. A man without boundaries is a man constantly at war with himself. He says yes when he means no. He agrees just to avoid disappointment. He gives and gives and gives, hoping that if he sacrifices enough, he'll be valued in return. But the truth is, the more you abandon your boundaries, the more you train others to do the same. Stoicism teaches that we only control what is up to us, our actions, our thoughts, our responses. Everything else is external. What other people want, feel, expect, that's not yours to manage. Your responsibility is to be clear, to define what you accept and what you don't, to communicate what you will allow and what you refuse to tolerate. Not with force, not with aggression, but with calm certainty. Boundaries are not walls, they are definitions. They don't push people away. They reveal who's capable of being close in a healthy way. And when you don't set them, you don't look strong. You look lost. Many men fear that setting boundaries will make them seem selfish. But the opposite is true. When you have boundaries, people know how to trust you. You become predictable, reliable, respected. A man with clear boundaries doesn't explode randomly. He doesn't bottle things up until he breaks. He stays grounded because he lives by an internal code. You don't need to justify your boundaries. You don't need to apologize for having standards. The people who truly love you won't be offended by your clarity. They'll be grateful for it. If she gets upset because you're not willing to be constantly available, constantly flexible, constantly self-sacrificing, that's not love. That's control. And it's your job to stop enabling that dynamic by remembering this. You teach people how to treat you by what you tolerate. What are your non-negotiables? What are the things that leave you drained, bitter, disrespected? Those are your signals. Pay attention to them. Use them to draw your lines. And once your boundaries are clear, enforce them, not with anger, but with consistency. That's the difference between drama and dignity. You don't need to raise your voice. You don't need to beg. You just need to act in alignment with your values. A boundary without follow-through is just a wish, but a boundary with consistency becomes your shield. It becomes your power. It becomes the container where healthy love can actually grow. The sixth mistake is making her emotions your responsibility. This mistake traps so many good men. Men who care deeply. Men who want to be present, supportive, and attentive. But somewhere along the way, they confuse compassion with codependence. Let's get one thing clear. You are not responsible for her emotional state. Supporting her is beautiful. Taking care of her feelings as if they're your fault is a fast road to burnout and resentment. The Stoics believed in emotional sovereignty. That means mastering your own responses, your own mindset, your own state. You are the keeper of your inner world, not hers. When you start trying to manage someone else's emotions, you cross a line that robs both of you of growth. Here's how it usually plays out. She's upset. You don't know why. You immediately assume it's something you did, so you shift. You tiptoe, you over-explain, you overfunction. All to bring her back to calm. Not because it's healthy, but because you can't tolerate the discomfort of her being upset. That's not love. That's fear. A strong man holds space. He doesn't absorb emotion. He doesn't mirror chaos. He becomes the calm in the storm. He lets her feel what she needs to feel without losing his own center. That's what creates real safety. Not fixing her, not controlling the moment, but remaining present and solid. When you make her feelings your job, you end up abandoning your truth to manage hers. You stop being honest. You stop expressing your needs. You stop living as a man and start becoming a mirror. You are not her emotional caretaker. You are her partner, and partners walk side by side, not with one dragging the other through every emotional valley. The best thing you can do is take full ownership of your own emotions. When you're grounded, she can regulate through your steadiness. When you're reactive, you both fall apart. So when she's angry, be still. When she's sad, be present. When she's confused, be patient. But don't lose yourself in her storm. That's not strength, that's surrender. Learn to say, I see you, I hear you, and I'm here. But your emotions are yours to feel. That's not cold. That's courageous. That's a man who knows where he ends and where someone else begins. Support her journey, but never mistake it for your own. Love doesn't mean losing your identity. It means being fully yourself so that you can fully meet someone else. And the more you practice this emotional sovereignty, the more peace you bring into the relationship. Not because you fix everything, but because you stop making it about you. You stop needing to be the hero. You start becoming the witness. And in that presence, love grows, respect grows, trust grows. Because when a man can feel everything and still remain grounded, he becomes the kind of man a woman can lean on without crushing him. He becomes a rock. And that's what real masculinity is all about. The seventh mistake men make is losing brotherhood and solitude. You get into a relationship and slowly your life becomes smaller. Your world starts to orbit around one person. You stop seeing your friends. You stop spending time alone. You give all your energy to the relationship, and before you know it, you've cut off the two things that make you who you are: brotherhood and solitude. Let me tell you something you won't hear often enough. Your woman cannot be everything. She cannot be your counselor, your coach, your best friend, your entire social life, and your emotional regulator. That's not a relationship. That's pressure. And no one thrives under that kind of pressure. Not you, not her. The Stoics understood the power of solitude. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, yet he wrote every day to himself, not to others, not for applause. For clarity, for alignment, that's what solitude gives you. It brings you back to your center. It reminds you who you are when no one else is watching. And if you've lost that, you've lost the anchor to your own soul. You need space to think, space to breathe, space to wrestle with your thoughts. Because when you neglect solitude, you start reacting to life instead of responding from wisdom. You start depending on others to regulate your peace. That's when you become fragile. That's when you become needy. That's when the relationship becomes a burden instead of a blessing. But solitude isn't enough. You also need brotherhood, and not just surface-level friendships, but the kind of men who hold you accountable, who speak truth into your life when you can't see clearly. Who remind you that you're not alone in your struggles, who push you to rise, not just vent. Most men go through breakups and life crises without a single real male friend to talk to. That's not strength, that's silent suffering, and it's killing your potential. Your woman needs to see that you have a world outside of her, that you have people who sharpen you, challenge you, and keep you strong, that you can go to war with your brothers and come back home to her with more clarity, more peace, and more presence. That's attractive. That's grounding, that's power. You want to be a better man in your relationship? Go spend time with great men. You want to be more patient, more present, more centered. Go sit with yourself in silence, write, reflect. Walk in nature. Put your phone down and get to know your mind again. Because when you live connected to other men and rooted in your own solitude, you stop making the relationship your source of everything. You bring a full cup instead of showing up empty and asking her to fill it. That's the kind of man who doesn't lose himself. That's the kind of man who doesn't collapse under emotional weight. That's the kind of man who is irresistible, not because he's perfect, but because he's whole. The eighth mistake is expecting her to complete you. This one is so common, so culturally romanticized that most men don't even realize they're doing it. You meet a woman, she makes you feel seen, desired, understood, and suddenly you think you found your missing piece. But here's the truth. If you feel incomplete without her, you'll feel even more lost with her. Because she was never meant to fill the void. That's your work. That's your responsibility. You were never missing a piece. You were missing clarity, direction, and self-respect. The Stoics believed that fulfillment comes from within. That peace is the result of living in alignment with reason and virtue, not emotion, not chemistry, not romance. And when you forget that, you start building your identity around someone else, around what she thinks, what she feels, what she gives. And that's when the power dynamic shifts. That's when the anxiety kicks in. That's when you start chasing, pleasing, overgiving, trying to make her stay because you think she's the source of your worth. But she's not. She's a mirror, a partner, a reflection of what you bring into the space. If you walk into a relationship empty, hoping to be completed, you'll only attract someone else who's doing the same. And two half-filled people don't make a whole, they make a dependency. So what do you do instead? You build yourself, you define your values, you create a mission that's bigger than the relationship, you make peace with your past, confront your wounds, and show up with a full cup. Not because you don't need love, but because you know love only thrives when both people are already rooted. You don't make her your center, you make her your complement. She adds to your life, not becomes your life. She inspires your growth, not becomes your purpose. And here's the paradox. When you stop needing her to complete you, that's when the relationship becomes truly fulfilling. Because now you're not taking, you're giving. You're not consuming, you're contributing. You're not clinging, you're choosing. So look in the mirror and ask yourself, am I expecting someone else to give me what I haven't given myself? Am I chasing love because I'm empty or because I'm full and ready to share? Because the man who is complete within himself doesn't need the relationship to make him feel alive. He brings life into the relationship. And that's the difference between a man who drains and a man who builds. between love that suffocates and love that liberates. Become whole, not for her, for you. And then, when love comes, it won't be something you chase. It will be something that naturally aligns with the man you've already chosen to become. The ninth mistake men make is confusing love with attachment. This is one of the most profound traps, and it sneaks up on every man. You think love means holding on tight. You think love means never letting go. You think love means sacrificing everything to keep her close, but the Stoics knew better. Seneca reminded us that everything in life is impermanent, that all things, people, circumstances, feelings are temporary, and the moment you forget that, you set yourself up for suffering. Because when you cling to something as if it will never change, you build your happiness on a foundation of sand. Attachment is fear disguised as love. It's the desperate need to control what can't be controlled. It's the belief that if she leaves, you lose your value, that without her, you're nothing. And that fear leads to jealousy, insecurity, and codependency. Real love is free. It doesn't possess, it doesn't demand. It allows, it honors the other's autonomy. It trusts in the connection without trying to cage it. It's love that says, you're free to be yourself. I'm here to walk beside you, not to own you. That kind of love requires strength. It requires letting go of the illusion that you can control her feelings or actions. It requires accepting that loss is a possibility and being okay with it. Because if your peace depends on her staying, your peace is already fragile. Detach with dignity. Love without desperation. Show up fully without gripping tightly. That's the Stoic way. It's not cold, it's not indifferent, it's courageous. It's trusting yourself enough to face whatever comes without losing your center. When you love from a place of attachment, you suffocate the relationship. When you love from a place of freedom, you create space for true intimacy. And that space is where trust, respect, and passion grow deepest. So practice loving with open hands. Practice presence without possession. Practice valuing her for who she is, not what she provides. That's how you transform love from a source of anxiety into a source of strength. Now, as we come to the end, I want you to sit with this. The man who doesn't lose himself in love is the man who becomes unshakable. He loves deeply but stands firmly. He gives freely but knows his worth. He listens attentively but speaks his truth. These 9 mistakes we've talked about, they're not just pitfalls. They're lessons. They're invitations to grow, to lead, to become the man she respects and the man you respect most. Love doesn't require losing your identity. It requires bringing your best self, your fullest self, your strongest self. Because when you do, the relationship is no longer a battlefield. It becomes a sanctuary, a place of growth, a place of true partnership. This is your call to action, to examine your relationships not as a source of validation, but as a mirror of your own growth. To stop chasing love as if it's something outside yourself and start embodying love as the result of your own virtue. Begin by setting your boundaries. Speak your truth. Own your emotions without absorbing hers. Reclaim your time with brothers and solitude. Stop expecting her to complete you and start completing yourself. Love without attachment. This path isn't easy. It requires courage. It requires discipline. It requires relentless self-reflection, but it's the only path to a love that lasts, a love that liberates, a love that reflects the highest version of who you are. You don't have to be perfect, you just have to be real. And you have to start now, because the man who waits to become worthy of love will never feel worthy. But the man who chooses to grow into love becomes irresistible. So stand up, stand tall, stand firm. Love well, love wisely, and never lose yourself in the process. This is not just advice, this is your legacy. The love you build today is the foundation of your character tomorrow. Be the man who loves without losing himself, and watch how everything changes.